In 1974, a massive industrial ship named the Hughes Glomar Explorer sat positioned over a remote patch of the Pacific Ocean, claiming to be mining the seafloor for manganese nodules. In reality, it was lowering a 6-mile-long mechanical claw into the abyss to steal a sunken Soviet nuclear submarine. This was Project Azorian, the most ambitious, expensive, and technically daring recovery mission in the history of global espionage. To understand why the United States government spent nearly $1 billion on a single salvage operation, we have to look back to March 1968. In the midst of the Cold War, the Soviet ballistic missile submarine K-129 vanished. It was a Golf II class vessel carrying 3 nuclear missiles, each capable of leveling a major city. When the submarine failed to check in, the Soviet Navy launched a massive search and rescue operation, but they were looking in the wrong place. They knew where the K-129 was supposed to be, but they didn't know where it had actually ended up. The United States, however, did. Using a top-secret network of underwater acoustic sensors known as SOSUS, the US Navy had detected a faint sound, a low-frequency collapse or explosion, emanating from the deep Pacific. By triangulating the data from multiple sensors, the Americans pinpointed the wreck to within 5 miles. It lay 3 miles down, 1,500 miles northwest of Hawaii, resting on a flat, featureless abyssal plain. For the CIA, the K-129 was an intelligence goldmine. It wasn't just about the nuclear warheads, though those were valuable. The real prize was the codebooks and the cryptographic equipment. If the CIA could recover the Soviet cipher machines, they could potentially read every secret communication sent to the Soviet fleet. But there was a problem that bordered on the impossible. The submarine was under 16,000 feet of water. At that depth, the pressure is over 7,000 pounds per square inch. No one had ever attempted to lift 2,000 tons of steel from such a depth. The engineering challenge was so immense that many within the Pentagon believed it was a fool's errand. But the CIA, under the direction of Richard Helms and later William Colby, saw an opportunity to pull off the greatest intelligence coup of the century. They needed a ship, they needed a specialized recovery system, and most importantly, they needed a cover story so convincing that the Soviets wouldn't suspect a thing, even as they watched the operation from a distance. Enter Howard Hughes. The eccentric billionaire was the perfect face for the mission. Hughes was known for his massive industrial projects and his penchant for secrecy. The CIA approached Global Marine, a company specializing in deep-sea drilling, and commissioned the construction of the Hughes Glomar Explorer. The public narrative was that Hughes was pioneering a new frontier in commercial mining. He was going to harvest manganese nodules, small potato-shaped rocks rich in minerals, from the ocean floor. It was a plausible, high-tech venture that fit the spirit of the 1970s. Behind the scenes, the Glomar Explorer was a marvel of covert engineering. The ship featured a massive central opening, known as a moon pool, with 2 large gates at the bottom that could open and close. Inside this hidden hangar, the CIA would house the capture vehicle, a giant mechanical claw nicknamed Clementine. The plan was to lower Clementine on a pipe string, one 60-foot section at a time, until it reached the seafloor. The claw would then grasp the K-129, and the ship's heavy lift system would slowly winch the submarine up into the moon pool, completely hidden from the view of any passing ships or satellites. The construction of the ship and the capture vehicle took years. Every detail had to be perfect. The pipe string itself was a masterpiece of metallurgy, designed to support its own weight and the weight of the submarine over a distance of 3 miles without snapping. The crew of the ship was vetted with the highest level of security clearances, and many of them believed they were actually working for Howard Hughes on a commercial mining venture, until they were briefed on the true nature of the mission. As the Glomar Explorer set sail for the target coordinates in the summer of 1974, the tension within the CIA reached a fever pitch. The Soviet Union was not entirely oblivious. They had noticed the American ship loitering in the area where their submarine had disappeared years earlier. On several occasions, Soviet tugs and intelligence-gathering ships circled the Glomar Explorer. In one instance, a Soviet helicopter flew so close to the ship that the Americans feared their cover had been blown. But the crew maintained their composure, continuing their mining operations, while the Soviets watched from a few hundred yards away. Beneath the surface, the real work was beginning. The descent of the capture vehicle was a slow, agonizing process. It took days to lower the pipe string, 3 miles down into the total darkness of the midnight zone. Using remote-controlled thrusters and cameras, the operators guided Clementine toward the hull of the K-129. The submarine was partially buried in the silt, a ghost of the Cold War waiting to be disturbed. When Clementine finally reached the wreck, the mechanical arms moved into position. The CIA's plan was to grab the entire forward section of the submarine. However, as the claw gripped the hull and the winch began to pull, disaster struck. The structural integrity of the Soviet submarine had been compromised by the initial explosion and the years spent under crushing pressure. As the K-129 was lifted off the seafloor, a massive section of the hull, roughly 2/3 of the target, broke away. The crew on the Glomar Explorer watched in horror on their monitors as the bulk of the submarine, including the critical missile tubes and the section containing the codebooks, tumbled back down through the water column, eventually slamming back into the seafloor and shattering into pieces. Only the forwardmost section of the K-129 remained in the grip of the claw. The CIA was faced with a devastating choice: abandon the mission or bring up what little they had left. They chose to proceed. The remaining section was pulled into the moon pool, the gates were closed, and the water was pumped out. What they found inside was a grim reminder of the human cost of the Cold War. They recovered the bodies of 6 Soviet sailors. They also found a small number of nuclear-tipped torpedoes and various pieces of hardware. But the primary intelligence objectives, the cipher machines and the nuclear missiles, were lost at the bottom of the sea. The recovery of the 6 sailors presented a diplomatic dilemma. Despite the intense secrecy of the mission, the Americans felt a moral obligation to provide the men with a proper burial. In a poignant moment of hidden history, the CIA conducted a formal burial at sea for the Soviet submariners. They were placed in a metal container and lowered back into the water with full military honors. A recording was made of the ceremony, which included the playing of the Soviet national anthem. It was a rare gesture of respect between 2 adversaries who were otherwise engaged in a shadow war. The intelligence value of what was recovered remains a subject of debate among historians. While they didn't get the codebooks, the CIA was able to study the metallurgy of the Soviet hull, the design of their torpedoes, and other technical aspects of Soviet naval engineering. However, the mission's greatest legacy might be its sheer audacity. Project Azorian proved that the United States could operate at the very limits of human capability, turning the deep ocean into a theater of espionage. The secret didn't stay buried for long. In early 1975, a group of thieves broke into Howard Hughes' offices in Los Angeles and stole documents that linked him to the CIA. Investigative journalist Seymour Hersh began digging, and eventually, the story of the Glomar Explorer broke in the Los Angeles Times. The CIA attempted to suppress the story, leading to the creation of the famous Glomar response. When asked for information about the project, the agency replied that it could neither confirm nor deny the existence of the records. It is a phrase that has become a staple of government secrecy ever since. Project Azorian cost approximately $800 million, equivalent to nearly $5 billion today. For that price, the US gained a modest amount of intelligence and a massive lesson in the risks of deep-sea recovery. A second mission to recover the lost sections of the K-129 was planned, but it was cancelled after the cover story was blown. The remains of the submarine still lie on the Pacific floor, shattered and unreachable. Today, the Hughes Glomar Explorer is gone, sold for scrap in 2015. But the declassified documents and footage from the mission serve as a testament to a time when the world's superpowers were willing to reach into the most inhospitable places on Earth to gain an edge. It remains one of the most complex engineering feats ever attempted, a 6-mile descent into the dark that yielded only fragments of the truth. As we look back at the wreckage of Project Azorian, we are reminded that some mysteries are protected, not just by government classification, but by the crushing weight of the Earth itself. The Cold War may be over, but its secrets are still being slowly surrendered by the sea. While the CIA was trying to read the secret codes of the Soviet Union, there is another code that has remained unread for over 600 years. In our next episode, we investigate the world's most mysterious manuscript, a 15th century book filled with impossible plants, unknown stars, and a language that has defeated every cryptographer in history. Join us as we enter the labyrinth of the Voynich cipher.